everybody, and welcome to Charts with Dan. We have a lot to get to today, including an unexpected Wall Street story that's making it onto the show. I didn't think it was going to either, but then AMC got mixed up all in it, so there's so much to go into, as well as the box office and everything else. One quick note, I feel like this is the Matt Damon, Jimmy Kimmel bit for this show, but I'm still working on that research project about early reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, etc. But because of all the craziness happening with AMC, that also got bumped from today's show, so I promise you will see it next week, either as this show as part of Charts, or I will spin it off into its own video, so you don't have to wait another whole week to see that video. So you will be getting, one way or another, the results of this box office research that I've been doing with reviews. But we've actually had breaking news, and I don't want to stack all the breaking news into one video because it's been a little bit few and far between lately. So today we're going to talk about what happened on Wall Street this past week, what it means for AMC and the theatrical business, etc. But first, I wanted to get to a few sadder announcements, because as we often do on the show, I wanted to take a moment to talk about a few people actually that have passed away in the last week that had a big influence on the movie and television industry. The first is Cicely Tyson, who passed away last week at age 96. Cicely Tyson was a Tony, an Emmy winner, and an Oscar nominee. She appeared in films and TV shows, including Sounder, which got her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. She also appeared in The Help, the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, which won her 2 Emmy Awards, the landmark miniseries Roots, and later in her career, she had a recurring role on How to Get Away with Murder. She was known for passing on roles and making sure that she played parts that lifted up African Americans. She did not want to play into stereotypes. She embraced Black women particularly to find and embrace the beauty within themselves. She was also a Tony Award winner. She was an honorary Oscar winner back in 2018. And in 2016, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, which is the highest civilian honor that is given to people here in the United States. So Cicely Tyson, a massive legacy, not just on screen, but off screen for generations of actresses, and particularly Black actresses in the movie, TV, film, entertainment industry. We also lost Cloris Leachman, who passed away at age 94. She was known for her comedic work mainly on film and in television, but she actually broke through first as a dramatic actress when she won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for the film The Last Picture Show, which was a movie that helped to usher in the new generation of Hollywood filmmakers back in the 60s and 70s. She was on The Mary Tyler Moore Show and also its spinoff Phyllis. And her most famous film appearance, apart from her Academy Award win, may have been in Young Frankenstein playing Frau Blucher. Cloris Leachman also won 8 Emmy Awards. That makes her tied with Julia Louis-Dreyfus for the most Emmy-awarded actress in the history of the award. She also has the most nominations for any actress in Emmy history. And finally, news that just came today, Dustin Diamond passed away after a very short battle with cancer at age 44. He was known as Screech on the TV show Saved by the Bell, and he had a very troubled life following his time on that show. He was in the news a lot, often for the wrong reasons, and it's the story that we see with particularly actors that get started very young, of how Hollywood can kind of chew them up and spit them out. You can get typecast in certain roles, unable to break out of certain things. But he was part of an incredibly popular TV show. It's one that I watched for many, many hours for years when I was growing up. It was recently rebooted last year on Peacock, a new version of Saved by the Bell. So even though I think even Dustin Diamond would admit that his legacy is somewhat complicated with the entertainment industry, it is always sad to lose somebody who was part of something that has meant a lot to many people, particularly of my generation. So to Dustin Diamond's friends and family and fans, as well as Cloris Leachman's and Cicely Tyson's, as always, my thoughts go out to all of you. So let us move now to the box office this past weekend, and we have a new #1 film, and that is the Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, Jared Leto crime thriller The Little Things, which debuted at $4.8 million, which by pandemic numbers is actually not too bad. It's higher than even some movies that came out when more theaters were open than are right now. There are theaters that are starting to reopen. This is also one of those movies that is part of the HBO Max deal, so it is also streaming at the same time on HBO Max. So $4.8 million for an R-rated film is not too terrible. Not an altogether discouraging number, although certainly not a high one either. The Croods: A New Age, however, that's an encouraging number for them because it essentially holds steady from last week at the box office. So The Croods: A New Age, even though it is still available, premium video on demand, people can pay to rent this movie at home, it is still holding steady at the box office. And when you look at the recovery and what's going to happen when theaters are able to open again, I think this is a good indication that family films may be the safest bets post-pandemic when theaters are open again, because even during this very tumultuous time, The Croods: A New Age has been a very steady box office performer. Wonder Woman 1984 is at number 3 with $1.3 million. It just beats out The Marksman, which fell from number 1 the last 2 weekends to number 4 this weekend at just over $1.2 million. And then Monster Hunter rounds out the top 5 with $740,000. Let's see what that does to the 2021 domestic box office charts. The Little Things enters the chart at $4.8 million at number 2. The Marksman is still number 1, but I see The Little Things overtaking that spot probably by next week. We'll probably have a new number 1 film. And then the rest are a mixture of new titles and old ones. Our Friend is at number 3. The Emperor's New Groove, the re-release, drops down a couple spots at number 4. The re-release of Alien at number 5. Jurassic World, the re-release, comes back onto the chart. It had dropped off last week. I suspect that's because when we were doing the box office reporting last week, that Universal had not reported grosses for the previous weekend, or maybe it just saw a big uptick this last weekend. However, it comes back on at number 6. Supernova, an awards hopeful, is at number 7. No Man's Land drops 3 spots at number 8. A re-release of Remember the Titans. Maybe that's all the Schmodown folks going to see that movie. Very important to know all the information on that one, is at number 9 with $65,000. Abominable, the re-release, at $55,000. And then we lose 4 movies out of the top 10. The re-release of Sing, Psycho Gorman, MLK, FBI, and Shadow in the Cloud all drop off the 2021 chart. Again, this is a very volatile chart. Even if a movie records grosses for one day that it missed the previous weekend, they could jump up and down. So there's going to be a lot of back and forth and changes on this chart, much like the worldwide chart for 2021. Now, a lot of people made a very good suggestion that I actually took. I have added flags next to the grosses so that you can perhaps more easily determine where all of these movies are coming from, particularly because this is even more of a global chart than it usually is, due to the fact that there are theaters in many parts of the world that are open more than they are here in the United States. Big Red Envelope from China takes a big jump up to number 1. It's now leading the 2021 worldwide box office. We should actually be looking for an increased presence at the Chinese box office leading up to the Chinese New Year, which is next weekend. It starts on Friday, February 12th. It really kind of brings us back full circle, because the first time I ever reported really on anything having to do with the pandemic was last year, when China pulled all of their releases the week of Chinese New Year. And that was such a big global box office story. I was just going back to watch that episode when I was still working with Screen Junkies and Fandom Entertainment. And it's weird to see myself talking about it in such abstractions. And then to see now, a year later, China largely back on track. We are very much not on track. So a year has made such a massive amount of difference. So Big Red Envelope, the number 1 film of 2021 right now worldwide. That bumps down Master from India to number 2 at $32.9 million. The Last Warrior, Root of Evil from Russia is at number 3. Then 2 more Chinese films, Wish Dragon at number 4 and The Soul at number 5. The Australian film The Dry drops 1 spot to number 6. Then we have The Marksman from right here in North America, and The Little Things from the US and Canada at number 8. The Octonauts, The Ring of Fire from China at number 9, and Gintama the Final at number 10. That drops a little bit from last week because, like I said, it's hard to find consistent box office reporting, so that may move up and down, but it is there on the list. Sailor Moon Eternal drops out to make room for The Little Things, which is now on the top 10. So that's what it looks like for 2021 worldwide. Now, the 2020 worldwide chart last week was what we like to call a hot mess, because I had wrong names and every. So let me just show you right now what last year's worldwide chart looks like. Demon Slayer, which I had dumbly written as Dragon Slayer, the movie, last week, and I heard from plenty of you about that, is back up to number 4. Again, reporting grosses, there's different numbers everywhere, and the numbers I found, it seemed to be corrected, but it is correctly listed there at number 4, with Tenet at number 5. That's the only real up and down. I think I had Birds of the Prey or something. Listen, I do my best, but especially when I'm making a lot of changes, I make dumb typos like that. So let's just call this a do-over for last week's 2020 worldwide box office chart. This is the actual 2020 box office chart from last year. Probably not going to see a whole lot of changes. Like I said, I think those 10 are pretty firmly entrenched, but you never know. Strange things can happen, but that is what last year looks like as of today. So let's talk about what's been going on in the financial markets. And please don't leave, because this is actually very interesting, and it does affect the movie industry. I'd had some people say, like, are you going to break down what's going on with GameStop when it was all happening, last week at the beginning? And I thought, well, maybe, but it's kind of hard to see. I try to stay somewhat movie-focused, film-focused. Well, luckily for anybody that wanted me to talk about this, the next stock up was AMC, and we have been talking about AMC's financial situation for pretty much the whole time that I've been doing the show on this channel, because it's been one of the hardest hit companies because most of their theaters haven't been open. The ones that have been open have not seen a whole lot of traffic, and so they've been in a bunch of trouble. We did a whole episode about what would happen if AMC had to file for bankruptcy. Well, it looks like that might be out of the picture thanks to a very unlikely assist from Reddit. I'm sure you've seen the news about how a group of Reddit users helped to spur a movement that has turned Wall Street upside down and has cost hedge funds billions of dollars, has led to a huge windfall for some investors who got in on the ground floor of what's been going on. It's a very complicated thing, and I have to thank first and foremost Corey Ross, who is one of my patrons, and who I've interacted with several times through the Discord server that we have over there, but who volunteered to kind of walk me through this because I'm kind of a dummy when it comes to this stuff. I didn't really know what was going on. Corey and I sat down, and he kind of helped step me through this. So thank you, Corey, for helping me to translate this for everybody else. But let's talk about what exactly has been going on, and it all pretty much goes to the act of shorting a stock. If you've seen the movie The Big Short, which we'll talk about in a little bit, you might be familiar with what this is, but basically I wanted to walk through, first of all, what is shorting a stock? When you short a stock, that means that someone, and usually think people like hedge funds will do this very heavily. This isn't something that your average investor is going to do, your guy on the street. Those are the ones that made what happened this week happen. These are more like your hedge funds, your entrenched Wall Street folks. Somebody borrows a stock. So they don't buy a share of a stock, they borrow a share of a stock. Then they take that stock that they have borrowed and they sell it at the current stock price. Then sometime at a later date, they buy that stock back from whoever they sold it to at a lower price, and then they return it to the person that they borrowed it from, having made a profit. So it's basically, I borrow something, it's not mine, but I sell it to somebody else for what it's worth, and then I buy it back from them later for a lower price, and I give it back to you, and then I get to pocket that money that I make. Well, this only works if the stock price goes down, i.e. they're shorting it. They're gambling that the price will drop. It's essentially betting against the success of the company whose stock that you're buying. If the price goes up, then the person who shorted the stock is going to lose money instead of making money. And shorting is nothing new. This is something that's been going on in Wall Street forever. But they really got burned with this. And the other question remains, how did this happen? Or how did people catch on to this? Well, this is something that Corey helped to walk me through. It's something called short interest. And it's basically this. Short interest refers to the amount of shares that have been shorted, that have not been bought back at that lower price, and or have not been given back to the original owner. So I've borrowed this stock for, let's say, GameStop, and I've either sold it at that price and haven't bought it back at the lower price yet, or I haven't given it back. It's basically outstanding stock. It's stock that I'm still holding on to, that I'm still gambling on that it's going to go down. Anything above 20% is considered extremely high when you're looking at short interest. So when you're looking at the percentage of the shares that are outstanding, anything above 20% is very high. GameStop short interest was at 121%, which means that some shares were shorted twice. It goes deep into different things that Corey tried to help walk me through, but it basically means that there was something exceptionally high that people were shorting GameStop even above the amount that it should have been able to be shorted. AMC's short interest was at 78.97%. So you can see that these companies were being shorted at a rate far higher than is considered even remotely normal. It indicates that an incredibly high number of people on Wall Street were betting against that company's stock going up. GameStop was already in trouble. It's a brick and mortar store. AMC, obviously with the pandemic, GameStop even more so with the pandemic. These were companies that were not expected to succeed, and hedge funds particularly were shorting their stock with the bet that it was going to continue to go down and go down and go down, but they were doing it so much that the rate became noticeable to people that knew what to look out for, people that were outside of Wall Street. And that's really where we come to what has been happening. Really, it's been happening over the last few months, but it came to a head last week. So there's a subreddit called r/Wall Street Bets, which is devoted to Wall Street investing. These are not all professionals. A lot of these are just people that are, you would call them amateur investors. That's not to mean that they're not talented or skilled. It just means that it's not necessarily what they do for a living. They realized that GameStop was heavily shorted. It was led by a guy named Keith Gill, whose username is Deep Effing Value, which, I mean, if you work on Wall Street and you see what's happened to some of your firms and you look at some of these, it's got to be driving them crazy. Wall Street Bets, they helped to drive a buying frenzy in GameStop stock, which peaked last week. That resulted in prices going up from $4 several months ago to up to $450+ per share at their peak, closing peak. I mean, the stock fluctuates throughout the day, but basically a lot of money. And when you think about the fact that if you bought a share of that stock at $4, if you're a hedge fund and you're planning to sell that back at less than $4 and it goes up to $450, you're losing a lot of money. AMC, which was another heavily shorted stock, went from $2.97 on Wednesday, January 20th, to $19.90 on Wednesday, January 27th. That means that hedge funds who heavily invested in shorting these stocks lost billions of dollars. And amateur, quote-unquote, investors who bought in made a lot of money. And this is where you see the controversy with Robinhood, which is an app that was supposedly to allow the common man the ability to trade stocks. When they restricted trading on AMC and GameStop and these other stocks, it looked like they were trying to protect the investments of these big Wall Street firms at the expense of people on the lower level who were just trying to jump into this big thing. It is very unstable, the stock market around these stocks, and you look at them, they go up and down, but it's not illegal. It's not market manipulation, and this is something else that Corey told me. It's not market manipulation. There's nothing illegal about it because there's no direction. There's no organization. There's not one word coming from the head of some sort of centralized force saying, we're doing this. It's literally a bunch of people getting together and deciding to do something independently. And it just goes to show you that for all of the power that a lot of these Wall Street folks think that they have and these hedge funds managers think that they have, that's not necessarily the truth, because there's another group of people that if they get out together, they can do these things too. They can make stocks go up and make stocks go down. And that's what's been driving so many people crazy, is this balance of power, this power shift that's been going on that has resulted in billions of dollars being lost. Because in my opinion, I think that a lot of these hedge funds think that the stock market is theirs to do with what they please. And they've just been shown that it's not. That they're not the only ones who get to call the shots. And so that has been the fallout and continues to be the fallout. So what does AMC have to do with all of this? They were heavily shorted. They were a stock that went up dramatically. So yes, a lot of the hedge funds and others that had invested heavily in shorting the stock lost a bunch of money, and some people made a bunch of money on their stock. But AMC actually was a huge beneficiary, and this is why. You may have seen this headline. Silver Lake, who was a huge investor in AMC, last week cashed out for, they had a $600 million stake. They cashed out to make about $113 million profit on their investment on AMC. So what does this mean? How does AMC benefit from this? In 2018, Silver Lake Partners invested $600 million in AMC via convertible bonds, which until they're converted is carried on the books, if you're AMC, as debt. So they essentially owed Silver Lake Partners $600 million. So when the stock price started going up, Silver Lake Partners converted their bonds into stock, and then they sold their shares a little bit later after the price had gone up some more for a profit to them. That basically wipes that $600 million obligation off of AMC's books. $600 million worth of debt is off the books for AMC. What this means is that AMC, we just talked about last week, has been raising money either through renegotiating their debt or selling more stock or raising more capital. But they said that they had enough money to get through 2021 if the market, if the market recovers in some way and people can start buying tickets, or July if nobody bought a ticket to another movie. This means that AMC is set through the pandemic. This means that AMC, with $600 million wiped off of their books in debt, is going to be able to get to the end of this thing unless something catastrophic happens. Now, there's always the chance that something catastrophic could happen. That we don't know. But unless an absolute catastrophe happens, they're going to be able to weather this storm, which if you're AMC, that's great news, because that wasn't always the case. We've said that doesn't necessarily mean they would have gone out of business, but a bankruptcy filing was not out of the question. So when it comes to that bankruptcy filing, I think that's off the table for now, which is great news if you're AMC, because over $500 million worth of debt off of your books when you've been raising additional stuff. This is relief that they didn't probably see coming. I mean, this is more relief than they probably would have been granted through any government aid package, any kind of stimulus or whatever. This is manna from heaven if you're AMC. This gets you through the end of the pandemic. But does it save the company? That's an excellent question. For right now, I think AMC is out of trouble. For right now, they don't have to worry about the pandemic forcing them to file for bankruptcy. However, you still have a company that faces a lot of debt. There's a lot of uncertainty about when the effects of this is going to come to an end, if the effects of it are going to come to an end. Are people going to stay home? Are you going to see a huge shift from theaters to watching at home with these kind of HBO Max deals? We don't know yet. This was a quote from MKM Partners, who are Wall Street analysts. They said, quote, "Near-term prospects of bankruptcy have been avoided thanks to $1.2 billion of fresh capital being raised since mid-December. However, equity shareholders have been diluted by roughly 75% over the last couple months, and there is still approximately $5.7 billion of debt, a total which is growing each quarter due to deferred interest payments." So Reddit did AMC a massive favor by taking a big debt load off the company, and that gets them out of the woods in the short term. But when you look at AMC, they still have a lot of debt on their books, number one. A lot of this capital that they've raised has been debt capital, which means that they have not necessarily just gotten money that they can spend. It's money that they're going to have to pay back. There are interest payments that are deferred that they negotiated, basically payments that they don't have to pay right now, but those accumulate over time. There are rent payments that are deferred that AMC is facing reportedly, where they haven't necessarily been paying rent on their space right now, but they're going to have to at a certain point down the line. So this is great for them right now. And I don't think if you're AMC that you're going to complain at all. But the idea that this single-handedly saved the company is not necessarily true, because they still have a lot of problems going down the road. But I think if you're AMC and you can solve today's problem and only have to worry about tomorrow's problem instead of have to worrying about both of them, then I think you're probably going to take that deal 99 times out of 100. Reddit, personally, I give you a bit of a tip of the hat. I wish that I had been plugged in more, because, you see this money train going off and you're not on it. Like, oh man, I wish I'd been more on Reddit. It's probably the first time I've ever said that in my life. But just on a personal level, I know that this does infuse some instability into the financial markets. But it also does expose, and this is something else I was discussing today, is that Wall Street has now been exposed with the same trick both ways. So in 2008 with the housing market, and this is what the whole movie The Big Short is based on, Wall Street essentially refused to believe that there was a housing bubble, and they invested heavily into the continued stability and growth of the housing market. And then when it collapsed, so many people lost money, including people that had their money in 401ks, etc., who just had found themselves decimated by this sudden loss. There were people that bet that the housing market was going to fail that made money. That's The Big Short of the title of the movie. Here now, 13 years later, we have Wall Street, who is basically has an unshakable belief that a company is going to fail. So instead, they're investing unshakably in the failure of a company. And you have a group of people who largely work outside of Wall Street saying like, well, you don't get to call the shots. we're going to call the shots in this case. And again, you have these hedge funds, et cetera, that lose so much money because they were betting the other way. And when you read, and I've read a little bit about a lot of these people that were making these investments, I think there is sort of a sense of revenge here because let's be honest, this is for most people a rigged system. And when you look at what happened with Robinhood and the fact that they shut down trades so suddenly, I think that we're going to see some very interesting regulatory things about that and why they did that and the real causes behind that. I think most people suspect that this is a game that they're not meant to play. They allow people in the public to trade because they have to. But I think that there is still a belief among people that work in Wall Streets and that are at hedge funds that this is not a game for the commoners. And here you have almost an everyman revolution showing that, they can have influence on the markets too. Now, is it great to introduce that kind of instability into the market? I think that that's an outstanding question. But I think in the short run, it's great to show people that they don't hold all the cards. And if you can disadvantage people that, again, in my opinion, took people for a ride many, many years ago, and a lot of good people lost a lot of money, people that I know, people in my family, people I'm very close to, if you can then benefit legally, which it is legal for people to do this, and cost them some money for once, I don't see the problem with that. So there have been, I think, 18 movies about this I saw that were greenlit today, so you're going to see a lot more about this. But this is a very interesting story, and I was reading up on it. I'm actually glad that AMC got roped into this thing because it's been fun to research for this show, and hopefully you might have learned a thing or two about it as well. It's a continuing story. We will see. The winner, though, right now, as I mentioned, AMC, who long-term is not completely out of trouble, but I think this has made a lot of people sleep a little bit easier because it looks like they're going to make it out of this all right. Let's flash back to a time when people were going to the movies, and we're going to go back to 1997. This was a big moment for me as a movie fan because it was the first time I saw Star Wars on the big screen. Back in 1997, the Star Wars Special Edition opened to $35.9 million. The weird thing to think about is that we are farther from the Star Wars Special Editions today than the Star Wars Special Editions were from the release of Star Wars when they came out. They came out 20 years after Star Wars came out. We're now 24 years removed from the special editions. So that's a weird thing to think about. It's like the special editions are more out of date to us than the original Star Wars was to these special editions. In number 2, in its 8th week, is Jerry Maguire at $5.1 million. Scream in its 7th week was at number 3. Evita in week 6 was at number 4. And then Eddie Murphy's Metro in its 3rd week was there at number 5. Let's look at some other notable moments from the 5th week of the year in box office history. Back in 1964, Dr. Strangelove hit theaters nationwide. That's after a brief delay following the Kennedy assassination. People didn't think that people would really be in the mood for that kind of political comedy until later into the year, so that got pushed into early 1964. In 1977, Dario Argento's Suspiria began its run in Italy. That has become a horror classic worldwide. In 1991, The Silence of the Lambs opened in limited release. We talked about like this with Patton last week, where The Silence of the Lambs was another one where it opened before the Academy Awards that year and then would go on to win Best Picture the next year at the Academy Awards. It's a very rare thing, but Silence of the Lambs is one of those movies that's done it. And then in 2009, Liam Neeson's action career takes off in Taken. So that's been hard to believe. It's been 12 years since we first got the real Liam Neeson action star, at least the one that kicked off the modern era. Whew. A lot of January releases between here and there. Let's look at what people are watching at home. And first, we'll start with Amazon. The number one film on Amazon is News of the World, which is still premium video on demand, followed by The Croods, which is, The Croods: A New Age, which is still premium video on demand as well. Then Songbird, which is now open for rental. Greenland, which is open in the purchasing window. Sounder, as I mentioned, this was the film that got Cicely Tyson her Best Actress Academy Award nomination. Obviously, people wanting to revisit her work. That comes in at number 5. The Big Short at number 6. Promising Young Woman at number 7, still on PVOD. John Wick Chapter 3 and Love and Monsters being rented at 8 and 9. And then The Wolf of Wall Street at number 10. Maybe some folks that have a little extra money and want to kind of play Leo DiCaprio, a little Jordan Belfort action. You shouldn't want to, but perhaps some people are renting that one. Let's see what people are watching over on iTunes. And the number one film is Tenet, which is got the full buy rent window open. Greenland, which has the buy window open. The Big Short is number 3. News of the World at number 4. Synchronic at number 5. The Wolf of Wall Street there at number 6. Exodus, Gods and Kings, sure, why not, is at number 7. Then The War with Grandpa at number 8. And PVOD releases of Promising Young Woman and The Croods: A New Age at numbers 9 and 10. And finally, let's see what people are watching over on Netflix. The number 1 film and number 2 film and number 3 film actually are all Netflix original films. Below Zero, Finding Ohana, and The Dig are 1, 2, and 3 on the charts. Bridgerton, the Netflix original series, is at number 4. Then at number 5, The Next 3 Days, which is not a Netflix film, but people are watching. Fate, The Winx Saga, the Netflix original series, is at 6. Go Dog Go, a kid's series, is at number 7. Then Homefront and The Vanished, 2 movies that are not from Netflix, at numbers 8 and 9. And then a 2017 dramatic series, Ginny Rivera, Mariposa de Barrio, is at number 10. So people catching up on all kinds of series, mostly Netflix originals, but also some stuff that's not from Netflix. And that does it for this week's charts. Thank you so much for watching and attending my Wall Street seminar, which I had to attend earlier today. Thank you again to Corey Ross for helping bring me up to speed on everything. If you want to see even more of what I'm doing, you can check me out over on Patreon at patreon.com/Dan Murrell. We are starting a whole new month. I'm going to be releasing the schedule later today. All of our watch-alongs, Schmodown study sessions, commentary tracks, movie club, you name it. We've got it all going on over on Patreon. We'd love to have you come and join us. And don't forget to check out my podcast, All My Movies, which comes out every Wednesday on the Schmodown Entertainment Network, but also as an audio podcast on Stitcher, Spotify, Apple, wherever you like to find your podcast. I'll be there. Thank you so much for watching. To my friend Kevin Smets, I got the shirt on, buddy. I'm thinking about you today. I will see you next time. Stay safe out there.